Something really interesting happened in the beta. The actual shape of the Eastern Kingdoms was changed, and a patch of the Plaguelands was just updated and added into the new area of Quel'Thalas. This is the area bordering Stratholme and the Plaguelands that looked exactly like the Plaguelands, but it just became a new subzone of the Eversong Woods in Midnight called the Tallesian Range. So far, not much is happening here, but seeing that they purposefully added this as a new subzone, is it a possible setup for future content? Could we maybe see Northeron, the Forgotten Dwarven Kingdom, maybe a the facility beneath this area, or could this be a setup for future Lordaeron, plaguelands, Stratholme updates that Blizzard already mentioned will happen to at least some extent in Midnight? Let's look at everything we currently know. If you wanted anything Warcraft related, Gamivo has the best deals on the market that you can get with my link below. You can get almost every other game's software, and they also just added mobile top-ups for all your favorite mobile games with the craziest prices. You can also use my code DORON to get yet another discount, so click my link and get the best deals at Gamivo. We've discovered something really interesting in the Midnight beta, and it is a little bit unexpected. So, as you may know, Midnight has revamped Quel'Thalas, but it has done much more than just simply updated the assets. From what we had seen so far, the entire area is literally built from scratch with the old parts just used as references. Even more importantly, they had actually compacted some of the zones so it isn't as split as it was prior to Midnight, and not only are we now able to fly from the rest of the continent into Quel'Thalas and Zulaman, but they also joined up certain zones. Like, they obviously removed the Ghostlands and they just have Eversong Woods as one single zone. Now, we have learned something throughout the beta and the various interviews that Blizzard actually has plans to update other surrounding areas of the Northern Eastern Kingdom and even the Forsaken zones. Unfortunately, the first part we discovered wasn't really as big of a revamp as we had expected. A part of the main storyline of 12.0 takes place in the Plaguelands in the Lightscope Chapel, and Stratholme was right on the border, but literally all they did was just made the cloud above it bigger, which isn't as satisfying as following up on the storyline of this destroyed city. However, you might remember that the Eastern Kingdoms were always a bit weird. I mean, it was a strange area. It was a strange continent prior to Midnight. I mean, since Quel'Thalas was added in TBC, it was really the only area on Azeroth where you just couldn't reach it normally, even though it is a huge part of the continent, and you had to go to an instance portal, and there was even this little area above the Western Plaguelands that wasn't even a part of Lordaeron, nor was it a part of Quel'Thalas, nor did it even have a name. It was just a random patch of land that had nothing going for it, and it was never really explained what this exactly was, and there was a whole lot of speculations currently going on. Now, with Midnight bringing revamped Quel'Thalas, they had also brought an actual change to the shape of the continent itself. I mean, you can actually see the new map in Midnight, and the actual shape is different. I mean, it's not drastically different, but they seemingly patched up some areas, removed some, added some. They also added a pretty large troll island off the coast of Zulaman, which will almost certainly be patch content based on everything we had seen, and I got a full video that you can check on that. They also made a transition from the Plaguelands into Quel'Thalas. Actually, seamless, it makes more sense. However, the reason I'm making this video is that they made a bit of an unexpected change. So the area north of the Western Plaguelands is no longer a part of the Plaguelands, despite the fact that it looks like the Plaguelands, and it has been joined up with the Eversong Woods, being now a subzone called the Tallesian Range. What we can see in the Midnight beta right now is that it is mostly built from vanilla or Cataclysm era assets, and so far it seems mainly empty, but suspiciously empty enough that it could be used for something else. What we can see is that it spreads from about the Western Plaguelands, ending all the way at the updated cloud I previously mentioned that they had added above Stratholme. So far, this doesn't really seem like all that much, just a random new wooded area, but there are a few things that makes this oddly suspicious. As I said, previously we had this little patch of land that didn't belong to anything, and it was kind of that way for nearly 20 years. Now this area and a bit more has been joined up with the Midnight main area, the Eversong Woods, and it isn't just a random patch of land Blizzard added, as this is literally a new subzone of the new expansion, naming it Tallesian Range Eversong Woods. Like, when you fly to the place, you will see Tallesian Range Eversong Woods. Now, Tallesian Range as an area has actually existed before Midnight, it just wasn't on the map, and it was just this like mountain range and ghostlands, but now this has been expanded and turned into something a bit more meaningful. this update raises a few interesting scenarios that we could potentially see soon. Keep in mind, this is the beta, so parts of it could still be placeholders, but seeing that this area is actually a part of Stratholme, it could indicate that maybe the cloud is a placeholder as well, and maybe they plan on clearing that up too. It's strange that the city is in the same place it was all the way back when the Scourge was at its peak. As I said, Blizzard has actually stated that more old areas will be updated as Midnight progresses further. They promise something along the lines of like, don't expect like Quel'Thalas type full-scale revamps, but certain old school areas will be updated at least to a certain extent. Plaguelands are right on the border, they really have been mostly cleansed by this point, so this area should look completely different in today's day and age. What I do find interesting is that they added this little patch, as I just mentioned, the Tallesian Range with the Plaguelands assets, but they joined it up with the Eversong Woods. I mean, if it was just a random patch of land, like completely with no purpose, they might have just bunched it up with the Plaguelands so that the borders make sense, but they wouldn't include it in the new revamped area of the Eversong Woods, which is pretty much the main focus of this expansion. It is really hard to say though, like this could be a complete tinfoil hat theory, it could literally end up being nothing, but it is really hard to say what this could be used for. I mean, the main reason being is that so far it just seems like a placeholder area, as in they might add something, but right now it is just a patch of woods and mountains with nothing really going for it. Before Midnight was announced, there was a really interesting speculation of Northeron, an actual dwarven kingdom that actually exists in the lore. It existed in the Warcraft RTS. It was a dwarven patch of land between Lordaeron and Quel'Thalas, pretty much around where this area currently is, but this was never actually added to the game. It even had quite a bit of lore of its own. What made the speculation happen for Midnight isn't just random speculations. There was actually some building materials that we had discovered, like leaked building materials that are seemingly from Northeron, which indicated that Blizzard didn't forget this area. However, I don't think it is likely that they will suddenly just spawn a huge dwarven kingdom here that we had never seen before, like in the middle of the expansion, like these trees are suddenly going to become like dwarven fortresses. What I do think is interesting is that there could potentially be a Titan facility under this area, which wouldn't be unexpected at all. Keep in mind, most dwarves actually live in areas that used to be Titan facilities, and you know, plenty of them are underground. Maybe there is something under these woods that we could discover soon, like one Titan facility that was previously foreshadowed in the game, but you had never seen it before. And remember, there's quite a lot of things going beneath the ground, like yeah, you may remember that there is full glades and everything with your god generals. The other interesting possibility is that this could somehow tie in with the patch, like with the Scourge or Forsaken or Lordaeron, or the development with the Army of the Light that could happen later in this expansion. I don't necessarily think that something will spawn here, like suddenly like a whole new city is going to be added in the beta, or something like a whole new kingdom, but this is a bit of no man's land between the Plaguelands, aka Lordaeron, and Quel'Thalas, and maybe this could be the bridge between the two in Midnight that could lead to some new Lordaeron lore, maybe a follow-up with the Scourge or the Promised Forsaken storyline that they had mentioned will actually be happening in Midnight. What is also suspicious is they seem to be using really old assets for this area, despite the fact that they updated the entire Quel'Thalas area with new assets, which could indicate that right now in the beta, this is like a temporary placeholder spot that could get updated or something could be added later to this. So far, just a small hint, but I think we should keep an eye on this thing, as maybe something could actually happen here. Thanks for watching. Check out how we discovered a brand new planet and actual friendly demons that we might see soon by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on Titans and Greek mythology that I've recorded live on site in Italy by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!